Hey, John. Hey, Raising the Flame. How's everybody? How's everybody doing today? I'm glad to see you here. I didn't really promote this one ahead of time. I just started it up. So I'm glad to see a couple of folks here. Any questions or anything you want to share? That's what this time is for. Hello, Remy in France. How are you doing? Wow. I like this Jaguar. This is a guitar that I got earlier this year, and it's kind of been through a bunch of transfigurations. Had it refretted, had it refinished, and still getting used to it. It's a beautiful guitar. Do you have a guitar, John? I mean, obviously you have a guitar. Do you have a Jaguar, John? Or does anyone here have a Jaguar? Or another offset that you like? There it is. Oh, that's why. Yeah, sometimes people confuse Jaguars and Jazzmasters. Similar shape and all I think the main differences are two things. These pickups, um, with a Jazz Master, you see these kind of bigger pickups that almost look like P90s, although they're not P90s, but they're kind of that sort of profile anyway. And these are, from what I understand, pretty similar to Strat pickups, but instead of three, there's two. And then there's a whole bunch of switching capabilities, which I can't show you right now because uh, part of the circuit is broken. I had this guitar refinished, and something shook loose in the shipping. Um, so the electronics are a little bit wonky, but I'll just give you the basic sounds. This is the neck pickup alone. This is the bridge pickup alone. And here's both pickups. And then normally, I don't know if you can see this, but on the bottom here, there's these three switches. So this one turns the neck pickup on and off. This one turns the bridge pickup on and off. And then normally this switch, I've heard people call it the strangle switch. It makes this, usually on most Jaguars, it makes the sound a little thinner. I had mine a different mod there so that when you switch it on, it actually adds a little bit more mid-range. So here's without that switch. I don't know if it'll come across here, but here's with the switch. And then up here, there's a whole other circuit, which if you engage that, it's called the rhythm circuit. It's a bigger sound, warmer sound. Kind of surprising. And then there's two wheels here that control the volume and the tone. When you're on this circuit, all this other stuff is disengaged, so you can't do anything with the volume or tone down here. So it's really two independent circuits, and that's cool. It gives you a lot of sounds. Uh, it's not as intuitive to me as like a Les Paul or an SG or an ES335. I grew up playing an ES335, so getting around on a Gibson is really easy. But when I pick up like a Gretsch guitar or something like this, I have to kind of fish around. I don't have the just muscle memory of like, oh, if I do this, it does that. Um, but I like all the sounds. So anyway, that's one big difference between a Jazz Master and a Jaguar. Is Jaguar has these pickups, Jazz Master has the bigger pickups. Also, a Jaguar is a shorter scale. A Jazz Master is regular uh, Strat scale, and a Jaguar is more like a Gibson scale. So things are a little uh, slightly compressed, and I like that because I'm mostly a Gibson guy. I don't have the whammy bar tucked into it right now, but the whammy bar on this guitar is really nice. If you don't have an offset guitar in your collection and you're thinking about it, um, why not? Like, they're really cool. They don't do exactly the same thing as anything else. I know those J Mascis Squire Jazz Masters are really cool. Um, I've never played a Johnny Marr Jaguar, but they look cool on all the stuff I've seen on YouTube. So that's what I might consider. I'm kind of partial to old guitars. It's really hard for me to have fun on a brand new guitar. So um, even though this guitar has been kind of a labor of love to get it all together, I'm happier with this than I think I would be with a brand new Johnny Marr Jaguar. But I thought about it. They look really cool. Remy asks, "Do you often play with a low D and why?" That's a really cool question. Um, I wouldn't say I do it often, but The reason I just tuned down to D was I was gonna play through this little etude that I wrote this morning, and I happened to write that in the drop D. So I tuned down specifically so I could play through this. I started playing through it a minute ago and realized that, I hadn't got into the tuning, and so it wasn't quite right. Drop D is an interesting thing. Like a lot of you, I probably think of drop D as a way to play songs in D because it gives you this, low tonic or D minor. But Johnny Smith, the great jazz guitar player, often played in drop D for songs in any key, just because it gives this nice root 5 root on the bottom, which is a nice movable powerhouse kind of shape. If you're playing melody stuff, it extends the guitar by a whole step, which doesn't matter all the time, but sometimes it's nice to have that extra note. Um, yeah, it gives you these octaves if you want to play in octaves. That's kind of cool. And yeah, anything you can do in kind of D shape stuff. It almost opens up the bottom end of the guitar to sound more cello like if you want that. And of course, the low D could be cool as a 4 chord, like if you're in a song in A. So the low D doesn't always have to be the tonic. It could be the 4 or the 5, or it doesn't have to even be. Yeah, John, they're really cool. I assume when you say really versatile, you're talking about this guitar, not the tuning. Um, but yeah, it's a surprisingly versatile guitar. Yeah, this rhythm circuit is a very, to me, usable sound on a jazz gig. And then, that might be more useful in other kinds of situations. I don't have my glasses on today, so I'm squinting a bit. Don Fraser says Mance Liscombe did a great version of Going Down Slow in A using drop D tuning. Cool. I'd love to hear that. Um, I know I've seen Duke Levine do some stuff where he plays a song in the key of A and uses the drop D as the 4 chord. Maybe he got it from Mance Liscombe. I don't know. But Duke is a modern day player who I've seen do that. Um, there's just a lot you can do, and it's only one whole step, but it opens up the guitar in a different way. I played a gig earlier this year with Liz Wright, where usually I'm the only guitar player on the gig, and there were 2 guitar players. I was playing with Marvin Sewell on guitar, and he was mostly playing electric. He plays Telecaster, and he has kind of a Cooter castery sort of 2 pickup Strat thing, and he plays great slide. So I wound up playing a lot of acoustic, and there were a couple songs in the set that were in drop D, and a couple that weren't, and I just thought, I don't want to spend a bunch of time going back and forth. It's easier just to leave the guitar in drop D and make adjustments, as needed. If you're comfortable doing that, I think it could be really fun. It's one of those things where I think you'd have to just um, forget it was there for, you'd have to play and then kind of forget about it, and then just start to find stuff, I think is what would happen. Don, if you have the YouTube link to that Mance Liscombe uh, going down slow, share it here and people can check it out. Let's see if I can play this piece. It's pretty simple. This is this little thing I was working on this morning. Is that right? There it is. No. There it is. There it is. Pretty rough now that I play it. It seemed like more together when I was sketching it out this morning. I think I need to do some more work to refine it, but there's some good elements in there. Anyway, that little piece I wrote called History is Over in drop D. Kind of atonal, angular. I guess so. I was trying to, in the intro, have it be in two keys at once. The melody goes down in A major and it goes up in, I guess, D minor or in C maybe. So So that was intentionally in 2 keys at once. And, I was also trying to write something in drop D that wasn't in the key of D and got away from that. So just experimenting a little bit, trying to see what was there. Uh, Maybe I'll play it again after I've brushed up on it. Raising the flame. Any tips on how to play with another guitar player, how to complement each other? That's a really good question. Yeah. Mm, well, the first place I would try to look for is things that are in opposition. And it's a little bit of, kind of a blunt tool, but it's always a good place to start. So by opposition, I mean, if they're playing high up, a high up part, see if you can find something down low. If they're playing, a Fendery guitar and you have something that's different, something with humbuckers like, a Gibson or something. If you have that as an option, I realize not everybody has multiple guitars, so that, I don't want to assume that. But assuming you do have some tonal uh, things, options, try different types of guitars, try different types of tones. Um, uh, like if you watch the Get Back uh, documentary, when they're up on the roof, John Lennon and George Harrison, I think, are both playing through the same kind of amp. I think everybody had Fender Twin reverbs there, and Lennon is playing a guitar, a hollow Epiphone Casino with P90 pickups, and Harrison is playing a Rosewood Telecaster. Their sounds could not be more different. John's sound is this kind of big, woolly, uh, not too focused sound, and George's sound is real stringy and clear, even when it breaks up. It's so anyway. So look for tonal opposites. Look for rhythmic opposites. If they're playing, you know, real busy, you could try playing something more floaty. If they're playing a lot of eighth notes, you could try playing quarter notes or dotted quarter notes. Um, if they have a part that goes up, maybe you go down. I don't know. These are just like places to start. What you end up with could be quite different. But um, I always find for me the danger is about if I don't start in a really opposite direction, then what I tend to do is mimic the other person, and that's not that useful. I mean, there are times when having two people playing the exact same part can be really cool. But if you're talking about how to complement each other, um, you can't just play the same thing all the time. I mean, that's gonna be one thing you do wanna be able to do, but, just think about all the like, get out a piece of paper and a pencil and write down all the different ways in which you think you could be opposite. High, low, loud, soft, staccato, legato, uh, ascending, descending, or ascending and static. Like you could have a part that doesn't move and the other person does move. Just make a list of every way that you think you could be opposite, and start there. That's what I would do, and that just might lead you to something that ultimately is the right choice musically. But at least in the beginning, I would try to get out of the shadow of just copying them. Yeah, that's helpful. That's how I think of it. Hi, Adam. Is alternative tunings regarding alternative tunings? Have you ever experimented with partial capos? I've messed around with a couple of Kaiser models and used them to get open tuning effects in standard tuning. That's from Evan Sakes. No, I've s- I've picked them up and put them on, but I've never spent more than 5 minutes with a partial capo. So that's a whole world that I've not checked out. I know there's a lot to it. Um, I know there's players that use it a lot. but that's not been a thing for me. I actually just have spent more time, I would say, in tunings and regular old capo. Yeah. How did you get into it? Is there, did you see somebody else play something with a partial capo that got you, curious about it? I know Dave Wilcox is a guy that uses partial capos a fair bit, and he gets great effects that way. Um, Michael Gorman says Kirk Lawrence reckons drop D is fabulous for slide playing if you have access to power chords on low register but standard tuning navigation. Yeah, that makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. Um, right, because a lot of slide players play in drop D, or not drop D, sorry, open D or open E. And in both of those tunings, you have the power chord on the bottom. You have root 5 root on the bottom. But if you want more kind of familiar stuff on the higher strings, you could leave them where they are and then play, I guess, more, uh, just more out of what you know on the guitar, what you've practiced your whole life. Shapes and licks and stuff would all be there for you. Plus, you get the power chord on the bottom. So that's cool. Evan Spake says there's a guy I saw do a workshop on them. I'll find his name and post it. I know there's a guy named Randall something or other who has done a bunch of workshops. I used to go every year to this conference called Folk Alliance. There's the Northeast Regional Folk Alliance, and then there's the one for all of North America. Um, and I've been to both of those a couple of times, and I can't remember his last name, but there was a guy named Randall something who was really into partial capos and was doing workshops on them. Avram Apatow says, I was playing with an electric bass player, some jazz standards, and I couldn't hear the changes at all. The bass just sounded like one low rumble. Yeah, that's a bummer. Um, yeah, that's a bummer. Your bass player should not just be making one low rumble. The way you're saying it, it sounds like maybe you're frustrated that you couldn't hear it, or were you frustrated that the bass player didn't do more to give you clarity? Um, the blame could be equal. Uh, I'd have to be in the room to hear what was going on. But yeah, uh, standards on electric bass. If the tone, well, on any instrument really, if the tone is too dark and all you hear is a low rumble, then that's not really helpful to anybody. Every musician, guitar, bass, drums, anything that you can make some adjustments on, uh, with drums, how you tune them, or um, if you're playing, on a stage where things are mic'd, how the drums are mic'd could make a difference. Bass, everyone should learn about EQ so that they can get a sound that's complementary. I mean, that's a really big thing. When you asked earlier about how to complement another guitar player, some of it is simply just EQ, like finding a space with the frequencies so that you can both operate. Um, I have recommended several times here and elsewhere just getting an EQ pedal. Could just be like a Boss EQ pedal or even like a cheap Behringer to get started or something, and learn how to dial in your sound, not just from the controls on your guitar and your amp, but a little more surgical than that. And yeah, if you're a mixing engineer in the studio, you would definitely think that way. If there's two guitar parts, they both can't have the same EQ. They have to live in different zones, otherwise they're just gonna kind of step all over each other. So it's worth it for everybody, guitar, bass, um, to learn how to make a sound that doesn't just sound good to you, but actually plays well with others. I mean, that's the whole idea. If you're on a gig playing with people, you have to play in a way that there's space for others, musically, sonically, and all that. Evan, you saw him at Folk Alliance too. In Memphis. Wow. Did we meet in at Folk Alliance in Memphis? That's would have been where I saw Randall. I haven't been there in years, but yeah, the last Folk Alliance I went to was in Memphis. That's funny. Yeah, Randall Williams. That's right. John P. I've been meaning to practice my ear training more intently. Do you have any advice or suggestions? I've heard that singing humming while playing is a good practice, so I've been doing that lately. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely true. If you sing, uh, I think what you'd want to do at first is actually sing something and then play it, just so that you want to make sure you're not just chasing your guitar around with your voice. It should be the other way around. You should have musical ideas and then play them on the guitar. So first, set a key center. Oh, let me get back into standard tuning. Well, I had this little loop going earlier. This is in G. So first, I want to be able to play all of the tonics. So I might start by just finding a good. We're in G, so I'll sing the tonic, da, and I'll find it on the guitar, and then maybe I'll find a higher one, an octave higher, and then maybe there's a lower one. And then you could maybe just do simple things like so it can be the guitar is a funny thing to do ear training on, because there's always the possibility of playing this way and this way, and then combining those to play in a more holistic way. So you might try by just playing on one string at a time. Da, da, da. Da, da, da. Da, da, da. Da, 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 da. Could be in minor. Da, 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 da. So you could do it on one string. You could also try it in a position. So like if you're in G in this position, might try playing a familiar melody. Because ear training, besides the fact that the guitar is this multi-dimensional space that we have to navigate, there's also an aspect of ear training. Um, there's ear training where like you hear a chord and you know what all the notes are. Like somebody plays a chord and you can hear what the notes are and name them, even if you don't have a guitar in your hand. Um, and that's a great thing to be able to do. But I think an immediately useful skill that relates to ear training is to just be able to play what you can hear melodically. And since most of us play in scale forms a lot of the time, an exercise that I recommend for my students is to play a familiar melody in some different positions. Like if you know the caged system, I'm in G still. So here's the E shape. And so I'll play Twinkle Twinkle in that shape. So you do that in that shape, then you try to do it in D shape. And so on, and you do that through all 5 caged shapes. So uh, that's maybe different than just pure ear training where you're trying to recognize what does the note D sound like? What does the note F sharp sound like? What does, the note B flat sound like? Um, but I think a very practical ear training element is just to be able to do that, to um, take a simple melody like Twinkle Twinkle, or it could be a lick that you learned, or anything that you're real clear about what the notes are in your mind. So the reason I'm picking Twinkle Twinkle is just because it's a melody that everybody knows, and there's no question about what the notes are. You could pick something that you like better than that, just as long as you're very, very clear about what the notes are meant to be. And then pick a key that you want to play in and play that melody in 5 different caged uh, areas. And that exercise might be really hard. A lot of my students find that to be hard to do at first, and you get better at it. But I think that's a really practical ear training thing, and to play in the 5 caged positions and also play up and down one string, and then find a melody on one string. And then when you can do both of those things pretty comfortably, then you could, try to do it on 2 strings or 3 strings. So it's kind of a hybrid of that on one string thing of going up and down, but also a little bit of across the string movement. That's been helpful to me um, for ear training. Yeah. Yeah. John, I'm glad that you noticed that. Yeah. Chasing your guitar with your voice is misses the whole point of what that is. Um, some people tell me that they practice like scales and sing solfege and do re mi fa so fa mi re do ti do so la fa mi ti do re ti do la so la so. Some people uh, like to incorporate solfege into it, but at least if you're singing the notes, sing something first and then play it. Yeah, cool. VURFYI. I'm not sure what that means. Uh, okay. Any other questions? Mhm. John is asking about El Chepe. Um, That's a song that I played with Wolfpack along with my friend Rich Hinman. Um, that still kind of boggles my mind how that actually happened. I I had moved to LA and um, I had been seeing a lot of cool Wolfpack stuff on YouTube. Um, so I was just kind of a fan. And then one day I ran into Jack Stratton at this coffee shop in Highland Park that I used to go to on York Boulevard. I guess that was his neighborhood coffee shop, and he'd go there in the morning and drink um, coffee, I guess. And sometimes he'd be working on something on his laptop. Always had headphones on, and I introduced myself, and then in the weeks or months to come, I was playing some gigs around there. There near this cafe. There was a bar called the York Bar, also on York, and sometimes Jack would come down and with Theo Katzman or some of the other guys, Joey Dosick would come down. And, I'd be playing there with Rich Hinman, and one day, after they had seen us play a couple times, Theo, reached out to me. I don't remember how, but somehow Theo I had connected with him more so than with Jack, and he said, "Hey, would you wanna do a song with us? Would you and Rich wanna do a song with us?" And I said, "Sure." So, I think he might have sent me uh, a an idea that it was gonna be kind of a J.J. Cale vibe. think that that was about as much info as I got. Is I think Jack had this idea that he wanted to do something with me and Rich that had kind of a JJ Cale vibe. So that was it. There was no demo, there was no sheet music or anything like that. And they just told me and Rich to come to this little studio, which was this tiny little room. Uh, and it was the band, it was Joe Dart and Theo Katzman and Woody and Jack and a couple of guys with cameras, just I think little GoPro cameras. And Jack taught us the tune, and then we did one take, and then I think we did a second take. And there were some little adjustments, like the solo, the thing there's these little stop time things and solo breaks. So I think after the first take, Jack made some adjustments about the length of things and who was, the order. But somehow it was just real clear and um, easy to get. He asked me to play a particular line that doubled the bass. It's like something like that. And he really wanted me to double the bass during the verses. And then there's a bridge part. I can't remember exactly the thing that Woody plays. Anyway, he taught us these parts in like 5 minutes. We did two takes, and then they were like, "Cool, thank you," and that was it. And Rich and I just looked at each other like, "Wow, I guess that's it." We're used to things taking longer, I guess, in the studio, but it just happened very quickly. And then not too long after that, they posted it on YouTube, and it wound up on their record. And um, I would continue to see those guys around at gigs. They were always super nice and super supportive of the live music scene in LA. And that's really what happened. I don't know if you have more specific questions, but uh, it was a very organic thing, the way it all came together. What am I playing? The Vagabondification. What a great handle. I don't know if you're talking about this guitar or a piece of music I was playing. The guitar is a 62 Jaguar that was recently refinished by Dan Strain of Danocaster. Um, I don't think Fender ever really made a copper Jaguar in the 60s, but I wanted one and Dan made it happen. Oh, Remy's coming in with a really great question. Wow. Serious question. Uh, oh wow. To be honest, I don't remember what I was playing before the El Chepe question. I don't remember. Maybe it'll come to me. But Remy's question, um, how do you choose the project you're going to work on? How do you set priorities between everything you want to do? Um, yeah, geez. That's a really good question, and uh, I'm not sure how to answer it, Ramy, to be really honest. In past years, I've had a more clear sense of what I wanted to do musically. Um, and mostly that has involved playing my own music as a priority, whether it was jazz, instrumental jazz, or original songs with words. And in the past few years, I've felt a little bit less sure about wanting to do my own music and more open to playing with other people again. And so I just try to keep, uh, you know, busy with things. Busy is not the most uh, beautiful word, but I try to keep active, maybe that's a little bit better, so that, my ears are in good shape and my hands are in good shape and, I can play music. I guess you could just do that by practicing at home, but I also like to get out and play. Uh, so, sometimes I pick projects uh, that are short-term things, just like, "Oh, cool, my friends are doing this gig over here, and they need a guitar player, and I'm glad to do it." Um, but if I do too much of that stuff, it gets really dizzying because it always involves learning, a certain amount of music and getting in a certain headspace for sometimes just one or two gigs. That might not be what you're asking. You might be asking more like, how do I prioritize my own projects and what I want to do? And um, yeah, to be honest, it's very freestyle and whimsical, especially now. There's been times in my life when I really knew, like, I want to do an organ trio with these people and play this music and have the kind of this way of thinking about it. And at the moment, that's a little less clear to me. The things that I am doing are I have a group with Rich Hinman called Rich Hinman versus Adam Levy, and that's a priority to me. Um, let's see, because I love Rich a lot, like we've been friends for 25 years. So there's already a lot invested there. And the joy of it is how comfortable it is. And the challenge of it, I think, is to not lean too much on the comfort and familiarity, but try to find new stuff to do. So that involves writing new music for the group and also finding music elsewhere, cover songs that we can do that keep it fresh. So that's a big priority. Um, I play guitar sometimes with Liz Wright. She's a great jazz and kind of all around singer. Um, she asked me to play some gigs with her a couple years ago, and I've just kept saying yes when she asks me. I just think she's one of the greatest singers on the whole planet. So I'm always glad to be in the music with her. So that's a priority to me, and she's just super inspiring to be around and to make music with. I've been playing gigs with Amy Helm. I feel similarly with Amy. Um, she's great, and her songs are really great, and the way that she grooves, especially when she picks up the mandolin, really brings the band together in a cool way. I've been playing with Sammy Miller and the Congregation. That's a group, a jazz group, but it's hard to describe just in one word. It's a jazz group. But anyway, so those are things that I do. But if you're asking with my own music, how do I prioritize? Um, I don't know. I think I just go one project at a time. I try to get into something and do it. Uh, if it's a record or a show, I try to do this stuff that keeps me inspired and challenged, um, and I try to surround myself with people that I look up to musically, uh, and that's just a way to keep growing. I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's how I do it. Um, yeah, I'd love for me and Rich to do a live gig with Wolfpack. That would be incredible. Uh, we'll see. So I'll play a little bit. Maybe I'll play something cool. Let me play in a normal position. It's so weird to play diagonally like that. I do it so that you can see what I'm doing, but it sure is weird. Remy, if you go to my YouTube channel, I guess you're on my YouTube channel right now. There's a playlist called Performances, and there's a bunch of stuff there with me and Rich Hinman. There's a full concert with Liz Wright. There's some stuff with my trio with David Pilch and Jake Reed. That group is called Fourth Floor. So yeah, if you want to see the various projects I'm doing, that might be a good place to start. Hope everyone had a good Christmas. Yeah, I hope so too. Mine was pretty mellow. But yeah, I hope everybody had a really sweet holiday. Maybe I'll keep playing that a little bit. This is a song of mine called Charlie Rich. Yeah, there's a song of mine called Charlie Rich. I originally wrote that for something I did for pickup jazz. And originally I called it Worst Airport in the World. And then I thought that sounded too negative. So I changed it to Charlie Rich, who was a great musician that I admire. Uh, thanks, John. Well, it's been an hour. I'm going to call it a day. I appreciate you being here. Um, and I hope I'll see you again. If I'll mention, I always try to mention this. I've got a Patreon channel. It's called Guitar Tips Pro. If you want to check that out, I would appreciate it. I'll be back next Wednesday. Happy New Year, everybody! I hope that your 2002 is a healthy, happy, creative, productive year. I'll see you in the new year. Take care, everybody.